Hey everybody, it's Kelly. Welcome back to another episode of Ask a Therapist. Today I want to talk to you about some of the misconceptions about religious trauma. One of the interesting things about being on YouTube is the more my videos get out there, the more metrics I get for how people find me and what videos they're finding. And one of the genres of my videos that gets watched a lot is religious trauma. And because of that, it gets put in front of a lot of people that have very strong opinions on religious trauma. Some of them, like the comment that ignited the idea for this video, are very helpful and add a lot to the conversation. Some of them, like another one of the comments that I'm going to address, don't really add quite as much as maybe some of us would hope. I've done a lot of videos clarifying my personal standpoint on things like religion. You can go find them. They are in my playlist. Go ahead and look at that. I don't think I need to clarify that multiple times for anybody, but what does seem to need to be clarified is what religious trauma is. Today we're doing that in the form of dispelling some misconceptions. And so in no particular order, here are 6 misconceptions about religious trauma. Let's get into it. Number 1, religious trauma is easy to spot. In some cases, yes. For some people, if they cannot walk into or around a church without feeling queasy or breaking out into cold sweat, if they can't talk about religion or they can't hear people talk about their religion, there is clearly something that has gone on there for them. And for other people, not so much. There are people who may go a long time in their lives without having the verbiage to know what it is that has impacted them so deeply. That doesn't mean they haven't gone through religious trauma. It simply means that they were not aware that's what it was. This happens a lot, and there are people out there who will tell you,
well, then it really wasn't religious trauma because you didn't know it was happening when it happened.
That's a fun one. There's a lot of things that happen negatively in our lives that we don't always know are the negative thing that happened to us until later when someone helps us have space and names for the things that happened to us. That's when we can identify what really went on and what really impacted us. There are tons of things in most of our lives that fall into that category. Just because you didn't know it was going on at the time does not mean it wasn't religious trauma. Number 2, it is only experienced in extremist religious groups or cult-like religious groups. You can experience religious trauma in mainstream denominations. You can experience religious trauma if you are not yourself religious, but you are around people who are. In fact, if you grow up in a country that has very strong religious doctrine baked into its rules and laws, you can be impacted by religious trauma whether you practice that religion or not. A big part of the insidious nature of religious trauma is that it is not that easy to spot. See point number 1. If it only happened in extreme religions and it only happened in cult-like entities, this would not be as widespread of an issue as it is because by the numbers, that doesn't impact as many people, right? But the push by many in the medical community to recognize this as something that has impacted people enough that it belongs in the DSM-5, which is the diagnostic manual for mental health, should show you that this is a widespread, widely impactful condition. That's going to take me into number 3, which is a comment that was left recently on the channel. And I know that people love when I take their comments and talk about them in my videos, but also you're leaving them in a public forum and I'm allowed to do that. That recognition of religious trauma within the DSM-5 is an attempt to regulate Christianity. What? If we were attempting to regulate Christianity in the US, maybe we start with taxing churches. Maybe we make people pay taxes. I don't know. That's just a thought. Like if there was actually a push to regulate Christianity in any way, maybe we would say that you can't be a billionaire and own a church and not pay taxes. The idea that there is this nefarious attempt from somewhere in the United States specifically, or any country that believes themselves to be founded on like Christian principles, to push Christianity out the door is an attempt to twist the reality of what is happening, which is that the power given to Christianity for so long in countries like the United States of America has harmed so many people that it cannot be allowed to go on. There has to be some sort of accountability. There has to be some sort of stop to the limitless power that is given to entities that are continuing to harm people. When we have these religious sects that are getting people elected to office and attempting to change the law of the land to apply to everybody, even people who do not believe in your religion, and are trying to regulate women's bodies and regulate who you can call a woman and who you can call a man without any actual understanding of any of the science behind any of this. That's a problem. Your religion and your beliefs do not belong on other people's bodies. So if there's anyone trying to regulate anyone, it's that way. Number 4, loosely related, and that is that the religious trauma that people experience only comes directly from the religious leader or the leadership in the religious entity where they worship. And that's just not true. Does it happen that way? Often, yes. And the cases that we can point to and say, obviously there was abuse happening here, those do often come from people in leadership situations in those organizations. And those in leadership are given a huge amount of power and therefore a huge amount of opportunity to abuse that power. And most people within that religious organization are expected to defer to that power. So obviously the opportunity is there. And also, it doesn't always have to come from the people at the top for it to be religious trauma. It could be from the people sitting next to you in the pew. It could be from the kids you go to camp with. It could be from your parents around the dinner table. It could be from your friends who are following the religion and have helped you to understand that your same-sex attraction is not natural. It's not called same-sex attraction, by the way, and it is natural, but same-sex attraction is a dog whistle that is used within the religious community to let everyone know how unacceptable this is and how bizarre and weird this is without actually saying it, because we love everybody very much. So that's the other part of this one, is that it's in implied language. We think that it is overt. It's by leadership and it's overt, and it's just not. These phrases that are used are part of the process of religious trauma. It's exerting this power, but not in a way that you could go back and point out and say, this was where it happened, and this is what was said to me, and this is why I know that this was not okay. Because if it was that clear all the time, then who would allow it to happen? Who would stay in those circumstances if you could point to it and say, this is what it is? The machine itself is built on making you doubt yourself. Because if you doubt yourself, then you are reliant on those who are in charge of you and those who are come around you as a family and who love you and support you, as long as you are doing what they want and what they say, right? As long as you're slaying your demons and working against those things that are taking your eyes from God. And in every corner of religious influence, all those things are said in pretty similar ways. They all mean the same thing. Don't trust what you know about yourself. Trust us and those around you instead, and we will keep you safe. And really, it means we'll keep you compliant. The 5th misconception is that full recovery necessitates you going back into religion, or full recovery means you never have any kind of faith in anything again. Neither of those are always true. There are many people who would consider themselves fully recovered from religious trauma and have found a way to have faith in something, because having faith in something is important to them. They don't necessarily go back into organized religion, and they don't necessarily subscribe to any one religion, but things like karma, things like tarot and astrology and the study of things that came so much earlier than religion and religious organizations. Or faith in yourself, faith in other humans. There are things that you can still believe in without the indoctrination of organized religion. On the other side of that, there are people who will tell you, if you've actually recovered from your religious trauma, then you can go back to religion and it won't affect you anymore because you've actually recovered. That's not true. Just because you have recovered from an abusive situation does not mean you go back into the abusive situation. Why would we do that? Every person's journey through healing and to what they do next is their own individual journey. There is no one right or wrong way to do that. And also, that means there is no reason or right to judge someone else's journey because it doesn't look like your own. And number 6, this is actually the comment that kicked off this whole idea. And that is the misconception that religious trauma is the same as religious OCD. And I don't know if the person who made this comment will ever actually watch this video, but I want to be really clear. They made a great comment on an older religious trauma video that I had made and said that the things that I was saying sounded like religious OCD, and they had gone through treatment for religious OCD and it really was helpful for them. I responded to the comment and I said, it sounds like you had a therapist that listened to you, heard what you wanted, and helped you to find the right path for you, and that's great. Also, not every negative belief taught in religion, not every really, really strongly held belief that someone carries in religion is religious OCD. There is a very big difference between holding a strong belief that is inherently a damaging belief and religious OCD. There's some nuance to this, and I will do a whole video on religious OCD if you want. I'm gonna need you to go ahead and drop me a comment and let me know if you want that, because in general, sometimes I think y'all want a video and nobody watches it. So if you want that, let me know and I'll make that video. But just to give a thumbnail sketch, religious OCD is similar to OCD in that it's an anxiety disorder, and it's where someone becomes so preoccupied with their salvation, with the way that God wants them to be, with a ritual of the religion that they're following, that it becomes an obsession where they have a compulsion to follow through and to carry out a certain aspect of that religion with regularity, so much so that it gets in the way of their daily functioning. And they convince themselves that if they do not follow through that compulsion, then disastrous things will happen. So for instance, if they do not pray correctly and often enough, terrible things will happen. They get very preoccupied with the idea of, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing what God wants? It's not only this is a dominant feature in my thought life, it's also I can think of nothing else besides this. This is the focal point of my whole life. Do you see the difference? It is a fine line, and that line is going to look different for every single person, which is why this person who left the comment had a great experience, because they had a therapist that heard them and listened to them from what I can tell in their comment, and was able to tell which side of that line they were on. Not everybody falls on the religious OCD side of that line, and some people do. Not everyone falls on the religious trauma side of that line, and some people do. A preoccupation does not mean an obsession, and a desire to carry out a ritual within your religion does not equal a compulsion. There is a difference. But again, what that looks like is different for everyone. If you think that religious OCD is something that applies to you, I would very much encourage you to seek out a professional that can help you to work through that, because that is one of those things that support groups and conversation with peers might only take you so far, and finding a professional to walk you through that might get you those extra steps that peer relationships might not. I mean, I would advocate for anyone suffering from religious trauma to find a mental health professional to help them work through it. Whether or not that's an option for you is very much dependent on your situation, and I get that. But also, that's the reason I do these videos, is so that there's some sort of a resource out there for people to at the very least start to gather the knowledge, gather the information, and make decisions for themselves about where they sort of fall in this spectrum of things that have happened to them in their lives and how it impacts them now and what they want to do about it. So there you go. There are 6 misconceptions about religious trauma that seem pretty prevalent to us today. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you want me to do a video about religious OCD, please leave a comment below. And that's it for today. Thank you so much for being here. I will see you all next time. And until then, oh my gosh. So I'm a private practice therapist, as many of you know, and I have written a course for conflict resolution for people in relationships, and that is going up for sale at the end of August on my website. And I'm working on writing a course for religious recovery. I'm doing that because not a lot of people have access to mental health supports. So I am going to do a live next week to just kind of see what questions y'all have and what things would maybe helpful in this course. So stay tuned for information about that. And if you fell this far into the video, congratulations. Okay, I will see you next time. Bye.